Hello, I'm Chris, this is Gross Models, and welcome to part 2 of building Revell's Apollo Saturn V. In part 1, I built the first stage and the base launch pad thing, and part 2 is the second stage, as you would expect. As ever, I've got the bags of bits. I'll get them all cut off the screws and ready to go and find out how much I'm going to be building. So I'll see you in a moment. Right, now there's some bits to finish off on the top joining section, which I've got cut off. Now, it doesn't show, it shows 4 of these being put on, but there's 8 spaces and there's 8 of them. And I can't see anywhere further in the instructions where it says to put the last bits on. So I'm assuming that it just doesn't show them all, but they all should be put on, because they're all on. Actually, no, there's not one there. Very strange. The top section has 8 little panels available for them, and it's these bits that I'm talking about, which go like that, but they don't seem to be on all 8 of them. I'm going to have to do a bit more research, which I don't normally do, and look it up and try and figure out. According to the pictures, there's like either side is actually not got one. So back to the drawing board. I'm going to look it up and find out exactly what's what. But apart from that, for the second stage, we've got the 2 little hooks that go on the inside of that piece that obviously hold the next section on. We've got the 2 bits of the tube, the top and the bottom to the tube, and the top white bit and the bottom thrusters. So I've got all the bits off the sprue. I haven't sanded them down yet. They'll need to be sanded and primed. There's one other strange bit. So I have got all 8 of those, but I'll look it up and see if I do need to use all of them or not. I do need to remove the centre pieces from these as well. That's the bottom, which goes on there, and then obviously the 5 rocket thruster bits go on the bottom there as well. As previously with these metallic bits, I'll be priming them in black, and then I say chroming them back up, or whatever colours they need to be. The other bits I shall be doing in white and basically leaving in the primer. Now, the sprues are pretty rubbish, as I think I mentioned before. There's quite a lot of flash on most of them. This is, I say, it actually quite nicely says second stage on it, but there's quite a lot of flash on it, and to make matters worse, some of the bits don't stay on the sprues. There's actually a few pieces loose in the bottom of the box. One of these was broken off, for instance. So also these bits, the fit isn't great. How can I put it nicely? If you line up one side nicely and it clips together, the other side has somewhat of a gap. So it's going to take a little bit of readjusting, bending. It is a tube, so it's not an unusual shape to try and make it. So what I will be doing before painting and priming is getting these to fit together properly. Now, basically, in gluing them together, it will hold them together, but it might not be round. So my plan is to make sure that I've got the circular pieces either end as well. That one will just sit in, so that's not too much of a problem. That can definitely go in after. But the top one, let's see, I think it goes, yeah, it's got to go inside when you fit it, so that makes it all just a little bit more challenging. That's got to go, I think, underneath that top ridge. So that's got to go in, and then obviously make sure that it's up the top. So that, I'll look up the colour and see what colour that needs to be. H, as is the bottom, H. I'll look back and see what H is. I think H is white actually. Somewhere the colour pages. There we go. H is green, of course it is. So yeah. So these are going to be done in the green again, which means that I've got to do them the same as I did in the first stage. Paint them black, and then I'll give them a chrome base and then the green on top, because the green didn't come out over the black very well. So I shall get that done. Yeah, I'll prime these separate and then get them assembled. The centre of these and that obviously needs to be cut off as well. That's going to go over the top eventually. That's like the protective bit for the next stage. So I'll go away, I'll do some research, find out how many of these bits need to go on. I think it might be all of them, because although it doesn't show that one on there really, it shows the shape of it as if it was on there, and all of those do seem to be. So I'm pretty sure it is going to be using all of those. And around the outside of there is this one, the funny shaped bit goes on there. So yes, I'll get them sanded down, stuck together as good as they get, and then work on getting rid of the seam lines again. So I can't do that until that's done, and it's a case of having to do, or ideally you'd be able to get it, you know, all painted and then assembled, but you're never going to get the seam line gone. So I'm going to have to prime, get rid of the nub marks first, the sprue bits, then prime. I can get these all painted up, the separate bits, not a problem, but the main white I'm going to have to touch up and go over when it's all together again, which isn't too much of a problem. Basically what I did on stage one. I'm not going to bother with the sort of pre-shading panel lining thing. It really didn't come out very well on the other, and it just made the white much more difficult. There isn't really any panels as such on these, it's just sort of shading between the edges. So I'm going to get away with not doing that. So tidy up and then on with it. So see you soon. Right, I've decided to do things a little bit differently. I've taken the top bit off to make it easier to work with. What I'm going to do is attach all of these to it and then paint them in place, because it's difficult to hold and grip and do everything with, and they need to be attached anyway. So I'm going to put them on and put on this bit as well, basically just using extra thin as ever with these. Just going to put that down there. Drop that in place. Make sure it's in lined up properly, and then just use a little bit around the bottom there just to suck in and hold it in place. So these haven't been primed yet, so I need to do those. Again, this let's get the inside bits the right way round, otherwise it will make clipping on the top bit very hard. They go that way. So I need to get that on there and glue that in place. So when this, there we go, just bayonets in place on there, like that. Again, same with the extra thin on those. I'm not going to do all these on camera, but I'll get them on there and then give that a bit of last over with the white primer while I'm priming these bits. The other bits I've got ready to go with black primer, but I'll do that after the white, because it's, you know, a little bit of white in the black isn't so much of a problem as a little bit of black in the white. So I'll get that primed and then be back. Right, let's see if we can't film some spraying. If the noise gets too bad with it when I'm doing it, I'll blank it off and put some music over the top or something, but why not? We'll try and show what's what. Right, these bits, the thruster bells and cells need to be done in steel anyway, so I'm going to do those. The inside will be done in the red, I think. I'll double check again, but I'm going to be doing the steel now. So I'm going to put coating of steel on the 3 big bits and the outsides of those, and then when that's dry I need to go over those in green again. But first time I've had a chance to show you airbrushing, so let's just put a few drops of that in there. You can probably hear some outdoor noises because I've got the window open because it's quite warm today. Right, so with spraying, hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'm not going to be doing it neatly because I do want these to be, so the black to sort of show through a little bit. So I'm just lightly going over those and giving it effect just like that, sort of a little bit, sort of still black and patchy, so it looks like it's been not so much used, but it's not brand new. I'm not sure if this is actually on camera. I think it, yeah, there you go, just about. That's the trouble with moving the camera around, you can never be 100% certain what can be seen. Right, I'm going to put a little bit more in there before I start doing the big ones. And let's start with the big one down the bottom. Again, it's not, I'm not trying to get a completely even coverage. This is a little bit heavier than the thrusters, but still hoping to get some sort of patchiness of the black to come through. So that's pretty much what I'm aiming for. You can definitely tell it's chrome silver, but it's not like a mirror because it's not basically. And when these bits are covered in the green as well, obviously the chrome's going to come through nicer. It's going to give a better background to that, and it will look, hopefully, just about right. This is just straight out the bottle, Vallejo Metallics. Sometimes gets a little bit blocky, but you can sort of blow back through the brush and clear that out. But all in all, that is pretty much what I'm aiming for. Just go back and check when it's dried a little bit. You can sometimes see some little patches that aren't quite what I was aiming for, like that. And the insides of these, obviously, you've got the thruster bells to go into them anyway, so that's not too much of a problem. And where I've got the blue tack stuck on the bottom of these is the bit that's going to be inside the base anyway. Yeah, the first one's always a little lighter than you think it is when you come back to it, so it's always worth looking at it again before you empty out the brush and go from there. Right, I'm going to clean out the brush and do the insides of these, and then when that's dry, go over with the green. So I'll see you in a moment. Right, I've got the surface primer in sort of rusty brown colour. What I've also done is divided up the thrusters to be one on each, so I don't accidentally spray back around the chrome again, although if I do, I can always go over it again, it's not a problem. So again, I'm putting this in after cleaning out the airbrush, and I'm just going to go straight down into it. With that. Again, it's not a perfect paint job, that's not what I'm aiming for. Obviously, if I wanted to mask around the edge and do it all perfectly, it's not a problem to do, but I don't want it to be perfect. These are engines, although the rocket isn't going to be launched, it's going to be on the launch pad. I'm pretty sure there'll be test firings and things like that, so it's going to be sort of slightly used. And that is that, pretty much. That's those done. Leave them to dry. I'm going to swap out and do the green over the top of this. I won't bother filming you with doing all that as well, but it's just normal, the same green I used on the other, olive green. Get them done, and then it'll be time to start doing some assembly, so I'll see you when that's ready. Right, let's get this thing assembled. Let's see how it actually goes together. All the paint's dry, So I've got the thruster bells there and that. So let's get those onto there first. They're just going to sit in quite nicely. So same as ever, bit of extra thin on the bottom, getting it where it needs to go. Making sure I get it around the edge, because that's pretty much where these are going to make most contact. Don't know if it touches into the very centre there. There we go. So leave those aside for now. I don't need this bit for a while anyway, because that will go onto the bottom of that, like that. But that first of all needs to go into the tubes, and then we need to get the tubes fitted right. So the bottom one will go in there, and the top one goes underneath that top lip. So basically it goes in like that. Now the top one obviously has a directionality to it, but I'm not sure that it actually makes a difference. Let's put it where it's got it showing anyway, just to be sure. It's actually got it over a little ladder bit over that side. So we get that in there like that. And while I've got that one side in, I'm going to add some extra thin around that seam there to get that half stuck together. Doesn't need to be, so it's not a structural bit, so I'm not too concerned about the other half of it. The other half is going to be the trouble getting it in anyway, because of the not great fit. So what I'm going to do is just add some glue to the pins and the holes on that side. I'll be able to touch up on the edge of it when that's together, and I'm actually going to run some around the edge there, because I'm not really going to be able to get to that afterwards. And then we'll see how that fits together. It should be better now, because I've got the round bits to sort of guide it into place. Right, that's that side, and that side as well. So yeah, when you've got the top and the bottom on it, it's much better. It's not perfect, and I do need to work on the seam there. So let's get some glue along there. Or at the top. Do one seam at a time, so if I can get that held together just for a minute or so. Not great down there. Might need to attack that with some sprue glue. And then obviously once I'm happy with how this is together, the other bit goes back on the top, and the bottom bit should still burn it on. Yeah, that way around. Yeah. So that goes on there and lines up quite nicely, mostly. Yeah. Actually, I'll leave that on there for now, because that will again give me another point of reference for lining it all up. So that side's not so bad. Let's get some glue down the other side and leave it to set properly. Just like the other side, when this is dry, just like the other section rather, when this is dry, I need to sand down that seam, tidy it up, and reprime all of it. This has actually got two cutouts, one slightly wider than the other, so that has a particular way round to go on as well. that will go on like that, and that is actually glued in place as well. So yep, I'll leave this to dry and then get some more sanding and sorting out done down there, and come back to you in a bit. That's all set and dried, and now the seams are pretty horrible. I think this is where it wasn't quite square again, so I can still manipulate it just a little bit to try and get that a little bit better, but I don't think it's really going to work overly well. The other side's better but not quite right. What I'm going to do now is use some sprue glue and basically cover that seam with it, and then when that's dried and just become plastic, I'll be able to sand it down back to round, and hopefully make it look a little more presentable. I know I've got to reprime it or repaint at least this bit of it, so I'm not overly concerned about that. More worried about getting rid of the definite line and just ending up with a small ramp rather than a step. This side is obviously the worst one. So this side is higher than that side, so I'm going to basically brushing it towards, and then it will hopefully get caught up on that step, and that should make it easier for me to tidy it up. When this is properly set, I'll leave it for a day, make sure that that's actually set properly. I will, while this is starting to set, try and squeeze it back into some semblance of better. I don't think it's likely to work overly well, but the sprue glue works lovely. It's, if you have not used it before, give it a try. It's basically just sprues in some Tamiya extra thin, leave it, it will dissolve, and then it will give you that sort of mixture that's just thick enough to go where you want it to go, not dribble all over the place. And when that sets, basically the extra thin disappears like it does when you're gluing two bits together, and it just leaves behind plastic, as if there was never a seam there at all. As I say, on this it's still going to be I won't be able to get it perfectly round, but it will look round from anything other than very close range. So hopefully that'll be alright. I'll leave that to dry, come back tomorrow and sand it down, and then reprime it and see if it needs any more doing after that. You can't really tell until you say sand it down again, so hopefully that will be nice. We'll see tomorrow. So after filling with some sprue glue and sanding down again, it's looking much better. It's feeling much more round as well. It still doesn't look quite right because I haven't repainted it yet, but I'm happy with how it's come out now. It's obviously not perfect, you're never going to get it perfectly circular, but it certainly feels a lot better than it did before. So I'm going to go and respray this now in the white, going over the edges and the bits where I missed, and then we'll be ready to do the final assembly of this part. So see you in a moment. That's as good as it's gonna get. I can't do much about the detailing in there. I have scratched it in with a blade to try and get a bit more of the sort of ridges in it. Again, it's just not quite right, but it's much better than it was. It's all been repainted, reprimed. The last thing to do is to put the engines back on. So again, just with extra thin around the inside of there. Fits on there. I'll just leave that standing to dry. And that will be that. The first stage, obviously that was already done, is still there, ready to go back together again. So the locking collar goes on in there. I've not been able to figure out if this has actually got a way around. It does seem to be sort of the same either side, so I don't think it has a correct orientation. So just a case of getting it lined up around the edge and then rotating that to lock that in place. And for some reason, you know why that's not working, because it's not on the inside of that, it's on the outside of that. It's the inside of this bit. Always check before you bother gluing. So let's get some glue around the inside of that, and that will lock that in place. I was wondering why extra thin wasn't drying very quickly. So that's that there. That one then does have a correct go around, because on the locking ring we have this flat step, which obviously needs to go next to the flat step there. So that goes down to there, and then it's in place much nicer. So there we have it so far. It's on the base, and is ready. What, stage 1 and stage 2 completed, all coming together quite nicely. That's the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you're enjoying the build so far, and I shall see you soon for stage 3, the third little rocket bit that gets narrower as it gets up towards the pointy end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and follow along for more. Don't forget, you can now get the Gross Models merchandise at grossmerch.co.uk if you should want a t-shirt or a hat or whatever. Have a look, see if there's anything you fancy, and I shall see you soon for part 3. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.